Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Welcome aboard, everyone, to another episode of the Democracy Exchange with The Depot, the one-stop station where we engage in conversations to foster understanding. I'm your host, Anna McRay. We have a very special guest with us today on the podcast, Beverly Evans Smith. Beverly Evans Smith is inducted in BGSU's Academy of Distinguished Alumni at BGSU. She retired as the Assistant Commissioner and Georgia State Director for Adult Education and GED Testing through the Technical College System of Georgia, TCSG, leading adult education training programs for over 50,000 Georgia citizens and supporting local literacy advocacy groups throughout the state. She has had an extensive career spanning multiple leadership positions, and she has dedicated herself to advocating for higher education and leadership development. It's an honor to meet you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here at
you.
my old alma mater.
I would actually like to start the episode off with one of your many leadership roles.
Okay.
So, you're the 26th president for Data.
26th national president.
26th national president for Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. An amazing organization with a mission of sisterhood, scholarship, service, and social action. Please tell me about your sorority. What does it mean to you, and how have you incorporated its mission into your career?
Wow, that's a good question. It suffice to say it means a lot to me. I became a Delta on Bowling Green's campus in 1967, so a very long time ago. I've been a Delta for 58 years now, and enjoyed our time on campus. Bowling Green did an incredible thing, I think, for minority students who were in sororities and fraternities on this campus. Back in the day, when sorority houses and fraternity houses were big, they made way to make sure that the Black fraternity and sorority that were here, which was Delta Sigma Theta and Alpha Phi Alpha, also had a house. That's very uncommon in the United States for that to happen on any college campus. But they wanted to make sure there was equity for students even back in, that was that 66, 67 time frame. So for me, it was a great experience. My dad, as a little background, was a civil rights activist. We spent our childhood integrating schools, churches. My dad integrated the cemetery when he died a few years ago. When I grew up, I really didn't have anybody else except one other girl in my school, in high school, nobody in college, that I really could relate to in terms of just being a Black woman. When I came here, not only was my dad a social activist in terms of civil rights, but Delta Sigma Theta focuses on that. As you notice, that's one of the things that we add in our slogan in terms of social action, in terms of working. Delta exemplifies that. Shirley Chisholm, Barbara Jordan, Loretta Lynch, 4 cabinet members over the years are Deltas. Right now we have 7 Deltas in Congress. So it's always been an organization that's very focused on social action. That drew me to Delta. The other thing that drew me to it was a chance to have sisters who look like me. Yeah. And really could, even though I was very, very solid in terms of who I was just because of what my dad did, but to have a chance to really be with other women who look like me was something that was really great. So I joined Delta for those reasons. It spoke to me as an organization. Became active in Delta. We moved around a lot, so sometimes I wasn't as active. But at some point, I decided, and some friends urged me to start working in leadership in Delta. And so I did. I worked my way up in the organization and then became the national president in 2017. Delta does a lot. It's 350,000 women plus. We're in 14 countries. When I was president, we chartered 4 more international chapters, which I'm very proud of saying. So we are global in terms of what we do. The organization has grown. Social action is what it does, but it also does an awful lot of community service. It really does things for young people and actually all Greek letter organizations. And, to just share with your audience, for Black Greek letter organizations, the most time that you're active, quite honestly, is after you're out of college. The chapters are still very active. Majority of our chapters are alumni chapters around the country. And so there's a lot of community service and work that we do. Social action working with children, working in communities is part of who I am. The organization speaks to that. In my career as a leader, working up in corporate America and in education, those skill sets I have working in those operations also help me to work in Delta Sigma Theta. So it all ties together.
How has the work changed from the 60s to now, and what has unfortunately or fortunately stayed the same?
Wow. The work of social action, you mean?
Yeah.
It's changed a lot. Let me start by saying that. I think there are more opportunities for everybody in terms of what America brings to people. The Civil Rights Amendments and the Civil Rights Bill really came about in that 60, 70 time frame, especially in the 60s and the 50s when I was growing up. Segregation is very different. It's not the way it was. I think people get a chance to see each other more, understand each other more. One of the reasons my dad focused so much on integrating areas and getting rid of segregation, because he always felt if people got a chance to know each other, that they realized that we are more alike than we are different.
Yes.
But that's kind of a hard pill to swallow. So back when he bought the land that we live on, Black people couldn't buy land in the part of the country that he bought it in. He couldn't get a loan in the state of Ohio to buy the land. He had to go out of the state to get a loan and to get attorneys to help. He couldn't find a builder who would build the house for him. He found somebody in another city, Navarre, Ohio, who came and helped him build it. The barriers that were there then aren't there now. And that's huge in terms of making sure people have the equity that they need to have. Are there still inequities? Yes. There are different kinds of inequities. I don't know how to explain it well. It's different, but it's not different in the sense that people still see and focus on differences, sometimes too much. And I think we're in an era now where we really have to be careful that we don't affect the rights that people have fought for, so that everybody has the equity that they need in terms of what they're doing. But you don't have problems buying land anymore. Job opportunities are greater. I think more people have an opportunity for education than they had before, and that makes a huge difference. So it has been leaps and bounds different than when I was growing up. I grew up in an area of colored and white drinking fountains. We don't have those anymore. Y'all probably don't even know what those are, but they're literally marked on top of the water fountain, colored, and there's one for white. So those kind of things don't exist anymore. The kinds of issues we face now are making sure that we don't go backwards in the progress that everybody makes. Diversity and differences and people who think differently and look differently coming together, I found in my leadership experience, means greater opportunity for innovation, for different diversity of thought, which is really important because new ideas can pop up. Innovation happens when diversity happens. Changes and opportunities for people happens when people see each other and see the experience they have rather than the color of their skin. And we're at a time in our country where that's so most important, and we want to make sure we don't lose those opportunities.
What are some of the initiatives that you are very proud of, either from your sorority or from TCSG, or throughout your career, that has made a difference in other people's education, has made a difference in integrating and creating that change for future generations to have access to more opportunities, to have access to more education? What are some of your roles that have played in that?
Especially when I was working in adult education and literacy, you can't be what you can't see. And I think not being able to see people doing different work means you can't really realize that it even exists for you. And one of the reasons that I think adult education was so important to me in terms of working that area is trying to make sure that people could read. And surprisingly, there isn't, when you look at, I don't look at racial lines when you look at that, because in some areas there are more people who of certain colors who aren't doing well and can't read, and in other places that doesn't have anything to do with color. I will say that. Georgia's a lot of farmland and a lot of small towns, and you can get by and do well without an education. And when you're living in an area where there's poverty and where there are a lot of small towns and small farms, you can't, as I said, you can't be what you can't see unless you're outside of that environment or have a chance for an education, because you don't have to stay at home and work on the farm, or you don't have to help your parents who may have lost their jobs in working. If you get that opportunity, then it makes a huge difference. Education is the key to the doors of about anything that we can do. What I'm really proud of in my time in Georgia was when I took the position as assistant commissioner, in the bottom quartile in terms of literacy in the country. When I left, we had moved up to the top quartile in terms of doing well in literacy. So we focused the program really on trying to be innovative and do things that could help people make sure they got their GED, make sure they got a chance to know that they could do more even in their community than they thought they could, because they felt better about themselves. So from that perspective, in terms of the things we did, working with students, working with adults, working with people who just really had decided, I can't do this, to show them that they can, made a difference. And we were able, in my tenure there, to really increase the number of literate citizens we had in the state of Georgia. I'm very proud of that. In terms of what Delta does, we have programs for teenagers, working with them in terms of making them feel good about who they are, helping with the education opportunities, making sure that we work in the community to wherever community centers were, we tried to be. But we have a focus and a whole initiative that really relates to education that we focus on. In my everyday job, when I was working, because I'm retired now, I really spent time with my teams trying to make them feel good about not only who they were, but to help them understand the potential that they had. I'm a firm believer in pushing people. If I see somebody who I know can do better than they are, I know that they can move to that next level. I may be a little tough with them, but I will push them to try and do that so that they really feel good about the successes that they can have. This country is built on opportunity. And the more opportunity, whether it's at work, whether you're a leader in an organization, whether you're working with children, whether you're working with people who are illiterate, whether you're working with people who live in areas where there's a lot of poverty, the opportunity is there. What we were responsible for is to make sure people see and understand that opportunity and feel good enough about themselves that they'll take that jump.
How is leadership development and training future leaders intertwined with their education successes and their successes beyond education into their livelihoods and their careers?
You know, leadership a lot of times is based on experience. And not all of it comes from classroom. Some of it comes from living. A lot of it comes from the things you go through, the things you see, the experiences you have, and whether or not you can take those experiences and share those and give them to others in terms of growing them and helping them be stronger in terms of who they are. If you see potential in someone, there's an education piece to it. There's a mentoring piece to it. There's a piece where you have to let people also fail in order to be good leaders and to be educated. I think the most successful people are people who have had failures and survived failures. They're comfortable with it because they've learned how to navigate living in the world that we live in today. A good leader allows their team to lead. They educate them and give them what they need. They don't do the job for them. They let them do the job for themselves. So they push them and try to motivate them and give them, a lot of times there's something in my job that I might do. Well, I won't do it. I may know how to do it, but I pass that on and defer that to a team member to let them do it so that they can learn. So a good leader makes sure that it's never about them, because it isn't. It has to be about the people that you're leading and what you do so that they can move to a level that you would never, ever be able to get to. I'm so proud of some of the people that I have mentored and led because they have gone and done things that I could never achieve. They've actually reached things that would be great for me to do, but they weren't for me to do. They were for them to do. And when I can see the light in somebody come on, and when I can see them achieve what I can only dream of doing, or I can see them doing, then that's success to me in terms of what you're doing. Education comes in many ways. It's classroom, it's experiences, It's failing and coming up from failure. It's giving people the opportunity they wouldn't have if you didn't give them the time to do it. It's understanding and seeing that light bulb come on in them in terms of who they are. So it's a combination of education experiences and taking the time to give of yourself to give of someone else so that they can develop.
It's amazing that all of that connects back to literacy, for example.
It actually does.
Being able to be to excel in our basic core subjects of math, science.
That's right.
Reading.
That's right.
English, all of the stuff that we're just taught in school. It's amazing that it's not just what you can pass a test on.
That's right.
And I love that when you approach education, you approach it more holistically. What are some of the strategies that leaders who are hoping to educate more people, provide them more opportunities, utilize to have that outreach for members who may not have education accessible to them to begin with?
You have to find a way to give them those opportunities. You have to let them have experiences. You make sure that you share what you're doing with others and you let them do it. You don't get in their way. And as I said, sometimes not getting in their way and just letting them go out there and see how they can do it on their own is what makes a difference in terms of who they are and what they can be. So I think it's all of that in terms of what you're doing and what you're sharing with others. And, you have to make sure they get the chance to do it. You don't try to do it all or take the credit for it all. And that's one thing. I have a few things that I have hot buttons on. And when I always start working with the team, I tell them there's some things I want you to make sure you understand as your leader or your supervisor, whatever it's going to be. First of all, if my door is closed and there's classical music playing really loud, don't open the door. Because that means it's not a good moment. and you just need to come later. So you know that up front. Try and share with them up front.
Totally understand.
The other thing is taking credit for other people's work. I just have a real thing about that. It's important to make sure people get the opportunity and you give them the credit for it. It'll pay off in the end. You can't keep power unless you give power away. When you give power to others and they get a chance to grow in that power, then what that has done for you was given you greater credibility, integrity with them, and that's the kind of power or what you want someone else to see in you. That credibility that you have, the integrity you have, the willingness you have to step out of your comfort zone, because I believe in stepping out of your comfort zone. If they can see you do it and they can do that and you've given them that, you've given them the power to go forward and move forward in terms of what they're doing. And a strong leader is able to do that and not worry about self. Self will be taken care of if you take care of someone else.
What are some of the barriers that keep people from having access to education?
Location, money, access to the internet. Now, think about that. Almost everything that we do these days is you're getting on social media or you're getting an internet or AI is coming, those other kinds of things. When children these days don't have access to those kinds of opportunities or to that equipment, and a lot of schools don't have that, and especially in rural areas, then they're missing out on an opportunity that they would normally have. When the census is done every 10 years, there are people who are afraid to get involved and engage in the census. They don't want to take it because they're afraid somebody will find them out or they think it's rigged. But those census numbers determine where cell towers are going to be built. They determine where hospitals are going to be. They determine whether or not grocery stores will go to those same places. So if you have areas where people have not engaged in that activity because they're afraid of that activity, they lose out in having access to those things that make difference. Access and equity is what it's all about when it comes to educating people and being able for them to be trained in terms of the things that they want to do. I think that's the biggest barrier. Beside the money and other things, people can find ways to help you get that. Students can find ways to cross that barrier and start going to school if they have the schools, if they have the access they need to social media, not social media necessarily, but to the internet. Those things and the way society is moving, the more we move to those kinds of vehicles to educate people, the harder it is on people who live in areas where they don't have access to those things and the things that will equip them to do what they need to do. And that's, I think, the biggest barrier to that. The other barrier sometimes really lies within an individual who think they can't do it.
Yeah.
And they don't have anyone there to help them say, well, try. Well, I think you can. If their parents didn't have an education and they're doing just fine, they feel where they are. And one of the children says, you know, I'd really like to go to school or college. You know, I did fine without that. I don't think you need that. So it really is encouragement and support from family members. Sometimes surprisingly stands in the way of students because then they're trapped.
Yeah.
Especially for young people to get out of a situation because they don't have a support system that supports their needs because they don't feel they need it, or they're embarrassed because they don't have it. And that makes it difficult too. And that goes to self-esteem issues.
Your office used to be in charge of administrating the GED tests
Right.
for the state of Georgia.
Right.
What did that process look like? And was the GED test just for a degree, or did you see that there was additional hope or additional opportunities or some kind of way for people to overcome a barrier by being able to have access to that test and taking that test?
It's definitely something that you need to have access to. The GED test, and people somehow also think the GED test is, if it's just a test you take, then you know you really haven't gone to high school, you haven't done the work. That sucker is hard.
I can imagine. It's the equivalent of a high school degree.
They are not easy exams at all. Matter of fact, some high school students couldn't pass they have degrees, couldn't pass the GED test.
I believe it.
It's very difficult to do, but access to it makes a difference. I think once they get past the barriers and really get to the point where they can take it. You know, the other people who took GED testing is people with educational disabilities are part of the group that we deal with as well in terms of doing that. The teachers that we have, and in Georgia we had 450 sites for adult literacy classes and places for people to take GED testing. And it's run by a national organization just like the SAT and other types of testing is. But access to it, again, depending on where you are, you have access to it. But it's tough for someone who, first of all, has to admit, especially for an adult, an older person, to admit that they don't know how to read is the first barrier we have to come up with adults who have to take a GED. The second really is making sure that in their community it's okay. We used to put postcards in mailboxes. We put them in everybody's mailbox because we can't ever tell who needs it and who doesn't. But getting past that. And then they're a role model in their own community when they get a chance to finish it. So there's pluses to that as well. For younger students, for students who are in high school, some have dropped out. Some were considered risky students, and so they went into a special education class. They may not have necessarily needed to be there, but they're classified there because it's a stereotype. And trying to overcome that barrier and get them out of that mode is another issue with the testing in terms of making sure people get what they need to get in order to get that education. And it's just a start. But if we can get them started and get them going, and they have a support mechanism that helps them, then people can achieve.
No, what about college? What are some of the complexities of students being able to go to college, especially if they didn't have the means before growing up?
Oh, yeah. The student loan programs are extremely important. Paying back student loans is a whole nother story.
Yeah, I
So
know.
that's the difficulty. Back in my day, I think I had scholarships, but I also had a student loan. But you could pay it off. In my case, you could pay it off if you taught for 5 years. Then you were exempt from it. You know, there were things that you could get it for. These days, it's not necessarily the case, but the student loan programs are extremely important. We want to make sure that those continue on. The terms I think they use in terms of how payment happens is really difficult for people, especially if they have student loans all the way through school. Then that's a huge debt that you're trying to pay off, but at least it gets you started. Access to finding universities is important in terms of getting there, making sure there may not be parents or others that help you with it. You're doing it on your own. So working students. I will tell you, and the technical college system are 2-year schools that you can go to 4-year schools once you graduate. However, the technical college system in most places now has jobs and opportunities in cybersecurity and technical training that you can't get in college. And for a lot of people, getting started at a technical college, they come out of school earning a whole lot more money than you would otherwise because of the kinds of jobs we have today and the kind of world we live in. And sometimes people lose the opportunity for an education because they think they have to have a four-year education. But four-year education to get a degree in a generic area doesn't get you a job as much as going to a technical school does, when you can actually learn a very strong skill set in a very technical area and really do well. So sometimes parents limit their own students from going, their children from going, because they say, well, you got to go to a four-year school because that's the education you need. When really what they really want to do, they could have gotten in those 2 years in a technical college, 2 or 3 years, and really done extremely well, better than parents would ever want to do. So also understanding the diverse types of education we have today that we didn't have before is another way to make sure more people have access to education, because there are so many different ways to get an education than there used to be that people really don't think about. And it's trying to make sure people learn where those types of education opportunities are is really important. We tried in adult education to make sure those kinds of opportunities were open to the students that we had once they graduated and they understood the wide scope. There are fields that exist today that did not exist 10 years ago. There's a million that didn't exist when I was here 55 years ago. And making sure people knew what those opportunities are and what's out there in the world is also very important. The significant importance, because I don't want to forget this, of being an entrepreneur is another thing I think that people really should consider. If you've got a really strong skill set, starting a business of your own, startups, especially for women these days, is they're growing by leaps and bounds because the innovation you have and the things you can do if you start your own business to do it makes a difference. My husband and I, even while I've worked, have had a company for 30 years now. And we do training. And I train leaders, and I also go in and help companies figure out how to work better. I go in and do organizational restructures. I've done it for churches. I've done it for churches even. I've done it for businesses from Fortune 500 to small businesses, because one of the skill sets I have is being able to go into an organization and figure out how to make it work better. And I share that with students all the time, because I tell them, try to figure out what it is that you do well, that you're good at. There may not be one type of business that you go into where that business is successful. I can go in and look at a nonprofit, a church, a government organization, a corporate organization, and work across different types of industry because of the skill set. If I were just to stick to a certain skill, a certain business, if I stayed in corporate America and worked up in that, or stayed in government affairs and worked in that, and looked for jobs only in that field, I'd be missing the mark, because I'd be looking for a field rather than looking for what I'm good at and where my skill sets are and where they can fit in a variety of businesses. We tend to limit ourselves, at least sometimes people do, in business or in whatever they want to do, because they're focused on being in a business or doing a certain job, when the skill set that they have could open up an opportunity for jobs in a lot of different industries that they may not have looked at, because they're looking at the jobs and forgetting, first of all, what am I the best at? What do I enjoy doing in working? Where can I take that and allow it to fit in different businesses? You change majors in school. I think I changed majors probably a couple times myself. But I found out after I got out working that what was more important to me in the job wasn't what I got the degree in. It's what I could do with the skill sets I had that I learned with the degree. I hope that makes sense in terms of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So one thing I would say to students these days, don't limit what you think you can do. Think about what you're best at. And it took me a while to realize every place I went, I wound up doing the same job. Something was broken, and I wound up having to fix it. Even the sorority, we had to restructure what we were doing in terms of some of our business opportunities and the way we managed some of the things. I always tell people that I work with, here's the third thing I tell them, besides don't come in the room when the door's not open. Make sure that you don't take credit for anybody else's work.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever come in and say these 5 words to me, because we've always done it that way.
Oh, yeah.
That drives me nuts.
Mm-hmm.
So if I go and say, this is wrong, why are we doing it this way? If the answer is going to be because we've always done it that way, don't even bother, because I can't accept that. We can't always do things the way we did it because the world is different.
Yes.
We can't always run organizations or business or even the government in the same way because we've always done it that way. With times change, things evolve, people evolve. The most important thing to do in terms of what we're doing is to make sure the work you're doing is relevant to today's environment in terms of what's needed and necessary today. If you've always done the same community project in your community and you've done it for 100 years, but the community is different, the people are different, the things that are needed are different, and you're still doing it the exact same way, you're not helping anybody. It makes you feel good, but you're not doing anything that really helps the people who need it because you forgot to make sure you figure in relevancy and understand the way someone else thinks. So that's the fourth thing. I'll tell you a story that I'll probably share with students. So when I worked in Southern Bell years and years ago.
Just with Southern Bell.
Southern Bell was, AT&T used to be a whole lot of different companies.
Oh, yeah.
They all merged together into one. Southern Bell was an AT&T organization in several southern states. Okay. And I went there because I was in higher ed as student activities, and I created the student activities department where I was. But someone at Southern Bell who was in HR saw and heard about the fact that I had restructured things there. The head of the business department said, hey, I know you got some problems at Southern Bell with a certain area. You want to change some things. You might want to talk to her because she does that well. So I met with them, and he said, can you come and fix a problem that we have with technicians? We have an issue with the customer relations in terms of some problems that are going with how they work and why we're getting so many complaints. We can't figure out how to fix it. So that's backdrop. So I went to work for a man named Mr. Sproul. So this is back in the early 1970s, when systems technicians in the South, in Georgia, couldn't go to certain cities after dark.
Oh, yeah.
Because because black folks couldn't go there after dark. So I worked with Mr. Sproul. Mr. Sproul was from the Deep South. I'm sitting at my desk trying to work, and Mr. Sproul said to me one day, you know what? I just want you to know, I don't see you as black anymore. And he was smiling. So I said, okay, I could take this several ways, but here's what went on in my head. Mr. Sproul is a white man from the Deep South.
What year is this, by the way?
This was in 1980 something or other.
Okay.
No, 1973 or 4. Okay. And the background from where he came was was a segregated environment. Okay. He had always worked with men. He worked with a few women. He rarely ever worked with anybody black. Okay, so I had to think in my head, what's the baggage he's carrying and where is he coming from in his head in terms of what he's sharing? He is happy he's been able to get over a barrier that he had so that he and I can work together. He recognizes he's got a barrier he's trying to get through. So my answer back to him was, I am so glad that we don't have that division between us. There was no reason to berate the man. I had to address his train of thought. One of the things I learned in Bowling Green when I was a debater was you can't win an argument unless you understand the way the other side thinks. It's really important to understand and know what's going on in someone's mind, to have them form the opinions and be who they are. In order for people who are diverse to come together in terms of their thought, whether it's men and women or a color thing or an age thing, because there's all kinds of diversity in terms of different way, you have to be willing to take the time to understand from whence they're coming when you're working with someone in order to make sure that you can make a connection with someone. And that's very important in terms of understanding when you run into a problem with employees, where is the problem coming from? When I used to go into corporations and work with them and try and figure out what the issues were, I did not talk to the leadership. I talked to the people who did the jobs every day.
That's the
So
way to
I
do
would
it.
go with them and sit with the receptionist and the cleaning staff. And I just say, if this were your company, what would you do? What things do you see? And they would tell me. And that would form the opinion in terms of what I would share with leadership in terms of what they do. And they think I was brilliant because I thought of this stuff. Why didn't I think of it? You didn't ask your own people. So they know what's wrong, but you have to understand the mindset of the people that are having the issue and be able to relate to that in order to understand the differences that people have. Mr. Sproul and I were friends for the rest of our lives.
It's incredible.
And we did that because I was willing to take the time to step back and get any chip off my shoulder that might be there and try to understand where he was coming from before we could relate.
I'm always inspired by women in leadership roles. I always have been. I want to be one. And that came from growing up with a mom who put books in my hands of famous women, everyone from Rosa Parks to Jane Goodall to Michelle Obama was in my book too. I love Michelle Obama growing up. She was on Big Bird. She was on my Disney shows. I'm like, I didn't know anything about Barack Obama. I knew Michelle Obama. And I, as somebody who knows the importance of empowering women, I want to ask you, in your roles, in your experience, how has it been important for you to empower women and to see women empowered so they can get up in those leadership roles too?
It's been exciting. It's a diversity of mindset issue. For such a long time, so I'm going to go back to another story. When I was at AT&T, I had a staff that was all men. And matter of fact, most of my time I did. And I can remember I had just gotten promoted to a district manager, big deal. And I had 7 men who worked for me. They came into my office and they sat there and said, okay, now we just wanted to have a talk. We wanted to explain. Now we can work for somebody black. We don't think we can work for a woman. We've never worked with one before, and we just don't think we can do it. I mean, these are also people who, their paycheck back in the day, you didn't have to have direct deposit. These guys would not have direct deposit because they wanted to make sure they got to spend their paychecks first. But anyhow, that's a whole other thing. But but there was a time not that long ago when, it took women a long time to get the right to vote. There were some jobs, there's still glass ceilings out there that women just don't get there. And so, but I said to them, I said, well, give me 6 weeks. And if it doesn't work and you really feel that way, then, we'll write the transfer papers for every last one of you. It's not a problem for me because it's your problem, not my problem. But those days, I think, are part of the reason why empowerment of women is important. Once we got to know once we spent time with each other, the diversity of thought between men and women is so very different. Yeah. And I think both sides can learn from the other in terms of empowering men and empowering women, because I think we're in an era now in some cases where men are the ones who feel like they are not empowered anymore because there's so much empowerment issues going on for women. And so many women that are moving up in things that it's causing some friction in some cases. I don't know how to make that a level playing ground. People just kind of have to see it for themselves. I do think that women have to understand and feel what they can do. I think it makes a difference for children. I think that children, when they're growing up, they see their mom empowered. It gives them some empowerment as well. Mm-hmm. It makes them feel good about what they're doing. So I think it's with empowerment comes respect, and I think that matters. I think the empowerment of women is a great thing, and I love seeing the people that I mentor grow into the women that they can be. And knowing that they can do multiple things at the same time. But I also know the women are very caring. So they also try to be empowered at work and be empowered at home. And sometimes women tend to forget the balance between the two and suffer a lot of burnout because they're not balancing what they can because they're trying to shuffle so many things together. They don't want to give it up because they don't want to let anybody down. It's that side of women in terms of empowerment that's really tough for them to deal with. But I think the empowerment of men and women, feeling that they can equally do the things that we need to do. That is nothing wrong with having a woman who's the president of a country, who was elected. Somebody in Japan, I think yesterday, is now the new leader there. That's not a bad thing, because the diversity of thought between men and women, I think, are what can make a country great.
And this is a pretty good transition to my final question. So you're a distinguished alumni of BGSU.
I was.
Do you have
I
any?
am.
Yes, you are. Do you have any advice for current students of BGSU who are going to be graduating, who maybe have just graduated, who are just starting classes, wherever we are in our journey?
Do you?
Do I? Yeah. Do you have any advice?
Do you?
Do I have any advice?
No. You. Be you.
Oh, do me.
Do
like,
you?
Okay, I see. Okay. I'm sorry. I confused
No, what do
myself.
I do? No. I think it's important to be comfortable with who you are. Understand who you are. Accept the good things that are about you, and accept the things that aren't so good about you that you may want to change or you're just fine with. But in an environment where social media seems to run the day and tell people who they are,
Yeah.
we have to get to the point where we're not into that, and someone can feel comfortable just being themselves and being the best yourself that you can be.
That's beautiful. Really, really, really great advice.
Good.
So thank you for coming on to our show.
Absolutely.
And special thank you to our production team, Bryn Drabeck, Julia Amlin, and Thomas Williamson. A special shout out to our founder of the Democracy Exchange Network, Robert Alexander. I am your host and researcher, Anna McRay. Tune in for next time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope all of you enjoyed it. If you're interested in finding the video version of this podcast, you can find us on our YouTube page at BGSU Depot. If you'd like to keep up with what we're doing, make sure to follow our Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at BGSU_Depot.